Well, good morning, everybody. The first thing I did was turned off my file, which I do. I'll do this probably a couple times in the course of this. Well, I got to tell you, that song, I wasn't planning on talking about that song, but I don't know if you ever feel like that, but there are just times when I'm out on my bicycle. We go to Big Bend every February. Big Bend is the most gorgeous place I've ever seen. And I feel just like that song. I feel like my heart is going to burst. I'm so happy. And I feel like I'm a part of everything. There's nothing like that feeling. Doesn't happen very often, but occasionally I get that. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to get that today, I hope. But that song was perfectly picked for what I have to say. The topic today is, and the other thing we could do is just not have me talk and go sit out in a retreat and tell stories of February in another location, right? Yeah, or last year maybe for us. So maybe we won't do that. So topic for today is speak truth to power. So I have to say, when I saw it, I was happy. You know, you heard me complain last time I spoke about the title. I didn't like it. I like this title. Not that anybody cares what I think, but the New Testament is filled with the qualities of Christians: faith, hope, grace, compassion. That's what we spend a lot of time talking about in here, it seems. But I think it's emphasized maybe more over other things that we should be talking about. We do talk about forgiveness, it seems to me, now and then, but forgiveness seems a little bit more difficult, so you don't hear as much about that, more about love and kindness and things. But we don't talk about the necessity to do the hard work of living the way and what that entails. The passage today is one where Christ speaks the truth, literally at the risk of his life, if you believe the way the Bible says, believe that story the way it's written. It seems to me that if we want to live a Christ-like life, we would benefit from reading the Bible in terms of his decisions and what he did. And it seems like what we do is on the other side, what he gave people, how he helped people, how he loved people, not what he did, how he upset all the Pharisees, how he said things that could have easily gotten him killed, and he went on in spite of it, the courage that he displayed. We don't talk about that. We talk about loveness and kindness. Where that comes from is the way he lived his life, right? And that's what we're all supposed to be aspiring to. But yet we spend such little time talking about it, it seems to me. I think that we're called to face power, whether that's the government or whoever that might be, and speak the truth as best we understand it. To be bold, to face the darkness. And that's how we mold ourselves into what we could become. You know, one of the things about the human brain is children are not born with the abilities they're going to need to live a useful life. They're born with a brain that's capable of learning all those things. And I think it's much the same for us. We're not born to be just like Christ. We're born with the capacity to become like Christ. But you have to do the things to get there. Children have to learn language. They have to learn how to walk. They have to learn how to lift things. I think we're in the same boat, but we need to be focused on what those things are. Most of us get around by acting and believing as if we aren't going to die, it seems to me. And ultimately and inevitably, that's the number one thing none of us really want to face. That's the hard thing. We fool ourselves into believing that we're the protagonist in a play called Living in Wayne's World, or you can feel free to replace your name with that. If the protagonist is gone, how can the play proceed? So I have to be here. That's our weaker side of accepting the real world as it is. In Christianity, I think we make the same mistake. We believe that God is concerned about us and will protect us from harm. And I believe that's true at some level. But we are protected by God in a very different way than many of you may believe. The fact is that harm will come to all of us. Disappointment, failure, fear, and many demons will present themselves as obstacles that will face fear and avoid until ultimately we die. It's the one and only life we have. And that's the way it's going to play out. Christ lived it, unafraid of death or illness, but living with courage, with a focus on speaking the truth. He starts out, I tell you the truth, right, many times. Here's where the Christian way, I think, would encourage us to face the darkness or the demon that presents itself, whatever it is. How to get through a divorce, financial problems, health problems, something like COVID. Much of the substance of the way is to stand up and face the darkness by doing so, by overcoming it, not running from it or hiding from it. Sanctuaries are not placed to avoid life's problems. You're to get help to deal with them. It's a call to become the best version of you by seeking out your demons, and if not destroying them, to be unafraid of them, to learn to live with them. That's the central component, it seems to me, of the way. The modern press is filled with conspiracy theories and stories about the end of our democracy and our country. If you believed all that, you wouldn't be a fool to be scared to death. If I believed all that I heard on CNN and Fox, I'd be hiding under my bed. But the truth is, if we look at our lives at the 30,000-foot view, nothing could be further from the truth. We human beings have done a pretty darn good job. For instance, today, 250,000 people will be lifted out of poverty. They were poor yesterday and they won't be today around the world. 300,000 will be attached to a power grid. We're bringing in a better life to people all around the world faster than we've ever done before in human history. Steven Pinker says, the explanation for the good old days is a bad memory. The truth is, if you were to pick any time in recorded history to be alive, this is the best. The downside is that some feel that our prosperity in the 21st century is an argument for why we no longer need God. It's already so good, we don't need that thing we call God. Science will answer all of our questions. Anything we need, science will deliver. Again, Harvard professor and cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker, in his book Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism, and Progress, claims that by almost every metric of human well-being, the world is getting better. Everything. There are fewer wars. There's less violence. We're getting rid of poverty worldwide. Health is better than it's ever been. Wealth, we live so much better than we've ever lived. Happiness and equality, all are improving. And yet, in the United States, the suicide rate's 33% higher than it was in 1999. More military members have died from suicide than from war. And that continues to this day. Well, how can that be if we're living the best of times? What's missing? It seems that pushing back nature has worked pretty well for us. Our quality of life has advanced. But it's often the demons and the darkness in our heads that mostly make us suffer. Shakespeare said it in Hamlet, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking that makes it so. So let's say you get taken to a dark cave. Reasonable to be afraid of a dark cave. I would be afraid. I'm a little bit afraid of the dark anyway. In our history, many people were attacked by animals in dark caves and killed in the dark. And I always worry about roaches and things dropping off the ceiling in a dark cave when I don't feel them. So the dark doesn't seem to be our friend. So if you are afraid of the dark and you can go into a cave, and a cave is really dark, man, You can't see anything. You don't know how big the cave is or how small it is. In a cave alone, what are you thinking? What are you thinking the most horrible things you can imagine? That's what you're thinking. I'll be eaten slowly by some terrible beast, or bitten by spiders or snakes. But all of them will be demons of your own imagination. If you can face your own demons, then you can grow. And this is especially true today. We become free when we stop refusing to face the darkness. We might still not like it, but to face the things we fear builds character. It allows us to take on even greater challenges. Retreat makes us weaker. When you think of faith, hope, and compassion, where do you think it emerges from? How do you get that? It doesn't just come. How do you feel real compassion for people? From a realization that life is hard and suffering is a part of it. That is something we can not only conquer, but something we each share with one another. It's this realization that allows you to truly have faith, getting through, facing something hard and making it, that you know you'll make through it. You'll make your way through it. You have faith and hope, the ability to feel for others because you've been in their shoes. You know what it's like to face a demon. The Christian way is about facing the darkness and speaking the truth even in the dark. Samuel DeWitt Proctor is a pastor at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. And he often reminded his congregation that many of them probably would not have liked the historical Jesus at all and his radical ways. In Proctor's view, Jesus said the wrong things. He hung out with the wrong people. And he made some of us today that we would consider them poor decisions that often countered our traditional religious beliefs. Well, like him or not, this Jesus is prominent in the Gospels. You see him everywhere in the Gospels. The Jesus we have constructed in our imaginations, in appearance and in behavior, often does not square with the Jesus of Scripture, who seeks to do God's will, even when it angers those who claim to love God with all their hearts, mind, and soul. So this verse today that Lisa read, I'm going to go through it one more time. Luke 4 is just one of those examples. There are many in the New Testament. Jesus is talking to Nazareth, his hometown. So he shows up in his hometown. He's saying, hey, I'm going to talk to these people. And he began by saying, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. Well, that's not something you're supposed to say, right? Because he's saying, I know what it should be, and here it is. We're starting today. Well, they all spoke well of him, and they were pretty amazed, it says, at his gracious words that came from his lips. Isn't this Joseph's son? Man, he's really become somebody. Look at him. They didn't say those exact things in the Bible, but it's close. Jesus said to them, surely you will quote this proverb to me, physician, heal yourself. And you will tell me, do here in your hometown what you have heard we've heard you did in Capernaum. Truly, I tell you, and this is where things start going south. Truly, I tell you, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. And I assure you that there are many widows in Israel in Elijah's time when the sky was shut for 3.5 years, and there was a severe famine throughout the land. So things were not good. Yet, Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a widow, Zarephath, in the region of Sidon or Sidon, a Gentile. So imagine you're all Jews sitting in the room waiting for Jesus to tell you that things are really going to look good. And he says, no, well, it turns out God likes the Gentiles and didn't do anything for the Jews. And he goes on, he says, and there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elijah the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed. Only Naaman of the Syrian, another Gentile. Jesus clearly knew this was not going to be well received. There weren't any Gentiles in the audience. So all the people in the synagogue were really angry, and they thought things they did to people back then. They'd either stone you or throw you off some cliff. They thought, well, let's go take him over to the edge of the cliff and get rid of this guy. They were furious with him. And what did he do? He walked right through them and left. He did the hard thing. He told the truth, that God loves Gentiles as well as Jews. And that took courage with that group on that day. His life and his teaching could have been ended that day. But he faced the darkness and he spoke the truth. If you've ever seen the movie The Blair Witch Project, a long time ago. But that's the whole point, right? Isn't it? So nothing really happens, but you think something's always going to happen and it's going to be really bad. You think something terrible is going to happen any minute. The best horror movies don't show you what's making the doors and the windows open in the night and the sounds you hear, because your imagination makes up the image far worse than you can do with any movie. Clinical treatments in psychology, when you boil them down, they find out what you're afraid of and help you face it. We call that psychotherapy. We help you do the hard thing. We don't tell you it's okay not to. You only become weaker. It isn't easy, but when you learn to face the darkness, you grow. You become a little stronger. That's the way. The secret to happiness is not following your bliss. It's not dancing through a field of daisies. It's not being protected from stress and disease. That's hiding you from the natural unfolding of your life. It's not the Christian way. At least if you are using Christ's life as it's told in the Bible as an example of the way. It wasn't a field of daisies, and it wasn't a life of bliss. Anything but. Genuine well-being comes from exposing yourself voluntarily to that thing you most fear, your demons. Confrontation with the monsters in your life, not running from them or hiding from them or having somebody take care of them for you. Our bodies, our human bodies, are amazing. And it turns out that if you expose yourself to a set of environmental challenges, certain genes turn on that have never been turned on, and you become literally a different person. Because you presented yourself with something new, and your brain says, wow, we don't know how to do this. We better start changing the way this person is so they can better cope with it. You literally change your brain. And if you don't do anything when you're faced with those challenges, you just get weaker because your brain says he doesn't need anything else. What he's doing, sitting in the living room watching TV, don't need a whole lot of strength for that. Don't need to make any change. Pursue something, a goal, obstacles. Some are frightening and disgusting, but pursue something. A rule that I think is a decent Christian rule is don't avoid things that you are afraid of. If you are afraid, it means that part of you is not developed enough to handle it. And you need to address it. I remember years ago, I was shocked. My grandfather was about ready to start my freshman year of college. And I was just having a conversation with my grandfather. And he said, well, what are you planning on taking in school? And I told him the courses. And he said, why not a foreign language? And I said, oh, I hate foreign languages. And he said, well, that's why you should take a foreign language. I said, what? He said, you will never grow if you don't face the thing that's hard. Don't make your life filled with the easy things, was his message. And he lived his life that way. And I try to. The things you fear, the darkness, they're exactly the things to pursue. I worry that we live in a culture where don't say that word because it hurts my feelings. Trigger words and microaggressions. None have any life in science. But you should be soft. You're weak. You shouldn't have to do hard things. That's not the Christian message. Look at the life of Christ. Nihilists reject all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. And there's plenty of nihilists. We're not among them. Well, that way, you don't have to be responsible for anything. If I'm a nihilist and believe life has no meaning, I don't have to do anything. It's okay for me to play video games, watch TV all day, and be covered in Cheetos dust. It's okay. I don't believe in anything. Did I tell you about suicide in the United States? That's not a prescription for happiness. I'm sorry. So how do you face the darkness, though? The thing you fear? Well, if you're like me, I have many demons. Fear of this and a fear of that. Where to begin, right? Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist, suggests that you start maybe by doing something useful. Like make your bed. Something pretty darn useful. In the military and basic training, the first thing we teach a young airman, how to make a bed. Because it's something useful to know how to do. And then you go from there. The message of what you do and how you do it really matters. One small thing at a time. Take on one small challenge first to become something better than you are. If your demon is you have trouble walking, what's the treatment for walking? Difficulty walking. Walk. Now, don't walk a marathon, maybe walk a block. Do something to help you grow. Your brain will say, oh, this person's way more active than they were yesterday. It's time to develop them. And you build your character that way. If you read Romans chapter 5, that's one of my favorite verses where Paul's addressing the Romans who are complaining because they could be killed by the Romans. And he says, it just builds character. He didn't say it quite that simply, but that's the message. Be thankful for hard things. That's how you become somebody. So dare to embark on the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is a symbolic journey. So there are books that have been written that are part of who we are, part of our essence. The Iliad and Odyssey comes up. The hero's journey you'll see played out in life everywhere, everywhere. It's a symbolic descent of a person into the unknown in which they have some monumental challenge for them. It's their monumental challenge, may not be everybody's, but they face it and they emerge from that a hero and transformed into something else. That's the call that Jesus has for us. The journey plays out in superhero movies everywhere. We love to go see them. They started at nothing, but they had a hero's journey. They took on something that was impossible, and they did it, and they become something else, so much better. Being able to successfully face down your demons and experiencing that transformation is what I think we're called to do. Our Christian theology calls us to transform ourselves through a life spent on the narrow path, the harder way, becoming a meaningful part of the kingdom of God here on earth. This path leads to a humility from the realization of how challenging this life can be. It forms our faith, our hope, and our compassion for others. That's what allows us to feel those things. We can actually have compassion for other people as we love ourselves for having made it through really hard times. We become a bit more Christ-like in our actions and deeds when we do that. This is the way as it leads to a life of meaning and well-being. Only from facing your demons, only from facing the darkness. In the 1932 novel, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, anybody read it? Okay, some people have read it. The novel describes a society of stability, control, drug-induced happiness, a society that sacrificed everything else for the goal of maximizing happiness, comfort, safety, and pleasure. Everything else is secondary. That's all we want. They develop drugs that can make us feel better. We've done the same. Think about today. Drugs that make you feel better. Vitamin P, often named Prozac. Kill the pain. Allows us to sleep. Allows us to stand ourselves. Sound familiar as you think about our society today? Comfort's everything. Near the end of the book, there is a conversation between Mustafa Mann, the representative of the establishment, and John, who has rebelled against the system. He's not thinking this is the right way to go. So Mann argues heatedly for the value of pleasure. He goes on about the neurological drugs that they've invented and how these have developed and can maximize your human pleasure. How convenient and easy it is for all of us. How comfortable you'll be if you can just buy into that way of living. And he concludes by saying, we humans, we prefer to do things comfortably. And John responds, well, I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. There is no better summary of human nature than that. These are the things that make us human. These are the things that give us meaning. Life is a struggle, and it's characterized by suffering, not comfort. Our calling as Christians is to face the demons in our head and bravely step out in faith. And when your life comes to an end, you can be comforted by the fact that you lived a life worth living and that the world is better because you were here. And as best I can tell, that's the real message of the life of Jesus Christ. You are called to live the way. If you're a Christian, you're called to live the way. And as we struggle to do that, we will all be better for it.